Hello there, everyone. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it? Welcome to episode number 20. We got there of Hodge On Nodge. How are you all doing? I hope you're all well. If any of you are watching live, because I have done this at lunchtime in the hope that we can scoop up some of the Canary fans who are maybe watching on their lunch break or doing whatever you do at lunch in a real job these days. Me and Michael work in journalism, so lunchtime's not really lunchtime, is it, Michael?
Hello, everyone.
I timed that well, didn't I?
Eat at your desk.
So yeah.
And now my desk's at home. That's really the only difference.
That's fun. I'm in Harry Potter's broom cupboard, basically the cupboard under the stairs at Privet Drive. That's my current location.
Exciting.
It's fun, isn't it? Right, okay, so what happened was in the NCFC social that we have on Fridays that people who consume all of mine and Michael's stuff or some of it or are misguided enough to do all of it, will know we do the NCFC socials on a Friday. And this was an idea that kind of germinated through that, because one of the things that came up in my head was what happens with Stuart Webbers' future and the whole sporting structure around the football club, depending on whether we stay up or get relegated. Hello, Chaz Tats, we're doing well. Anyone else who's watching, please say hello in the chat. If you've got any questions, then do please get in touch with them. We're going to make this quite quick fire, but I think it's a good time to ask the question, because there's an argument to be made that Norwich City can stay up. There's an argument to be made that we're more likely to go down. I'm still probably leaning towards the latter, but it's great to be in the position where either or could happen. But what I want to know is how much hinges on that. How much hinges on whether we go down or stay up? What could the future look like? And I think one of the things that came up when we did mention it in the NCFC social, Michael, is we're still kind of purely in the realms of speculation with this. This is just going to be the best guesstimation that me and you can make. But you're well plugged into the Canary Matrix, mate. So hopefully you can elucidate slightly, and probably from a far more informed position than I can. But I think it's, first off, right, journal to journal, if you like, is although people said I'm not a journal just because I didn't know a substitute when I was busy burying myself in NBA. Anyway, regardless of that.
Oh, I've missed loads of substitutes.
Mate, honestly, I didn't notice Ida wasn't in the bench. You're meant to be a journal, man. Right, well, I have a gesture that I could make to those people. But anyway, not that bothered me. Is this a valuable question to ask? Is what I was going to ask you. Like, do you think it's a useful time to start maybe thinking about what the future might look like? Because everything in football goes in cycles. And I feel that we're definitely past the halfway stage and maybe heading towards the end of this particular cycle at Norwich City in terms of the way the structure of the club looks. Would you concur with that?
I think we spent a lot of time over the first, so this current era really is the sort of the Stuart Webber era, really. Him arriving at the club is what altered the way that the club was being run day to day. And obviously Daniel Farker then follows as head coach, and now we have Dean Smith. So I think you have to kind of take it from April 2017 onwards, really. And I think through all that period, there's always been a bigger picture. There's always been an essence of what the club is trying to do in the longer term that extends beyond the current season you're in and whatever the current ups and downs and idiosyncrasies of the form are and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. This period now feels like it's less about the bigger picture. It's almost like, clearly the club will know and will have an idea of what their plans are going forwards, but I feel like they're probably a bit more established from past years, so therefore a little bit less focused on and almost in the background.
But when you say that as well, like if you look at football and identity as one, there's definitely been an agreement to compromise on that with the objective of survival, because we're not playing an expansive, particularly attractive style of football, although I think attractive football extends as far as scoring goals and winning football matches. And at least we're showing more of doing that. But there has been a bit of a compromise in some areas of what that original vision looked like. Or you could argue it's evolved.
I think there was under Daniel because under Daniel Farker, essentially he got caught between two probably different posts, which was A, can you keep hold of your identity, but B, can you also be better in the Premier League? So in the end he managed to do neither, essentially. So I think it would have been a fair accusation if this year nothing had changed and no one had improved. You'd be like, well, what on earth was the point of that? So you have to assume that they would have changed some things, and I don't really have an argument or an issue with them trying to be a bit more pragmatic in the Premier League, because I think it would be foolhardy to think Norwich could come up, play the same football and survive. Really, I think Leeds have kind of managed it, but they did it with spending a lot of money on some really key players, and I think that is obviously beyond Norwich, so they can't really do that. Or they've chosen to make sort of wider squad improvements on a lower bracket of players, so therefore probably a smaller increase in quality, but less risk on one or two players being missing out through injury or whatever. So, so yeah, I mean, it's been very quiet, and I think at the moment I do feel like there is the bigger picture is kind of under a blanket, and everyone's just hoping that Norwich actually stay up, because that's been the goal. That's been the goal they've worked for 4 years. I wrote a piece on The Athletic about it. This is it really. This is for 4 or 5 years of the plan, which would be 5, isn't it? That the idea was eventually to establish yourselves in the Premier League. And I don't know what things look like. It's why probably that the initial question is so hard to answer, because I don't really know what it looks like if they don't manage to stay up this year, because the big carrot that everything has been built around is trying to earn promotion. And if you can't manage to make it stick for at least a second season on both attempts, what's the carrot next year if you're relegated, albeit with different people? There are players who have done a lot of that work in getting Norwich to where they are, but they'll be so much older and further down, and they may have different priorities. Even looking at someone like Teemu Pukki, who is theoretically out of contract in the summer, but Norwich have an option for another 12 months. Does he want to do another year in the Championship? I mean, it's a lot of goals, but maybe you're like, why do you want to work towards Premier League? I don't know. It's probably not even up to him personally.
I think if you're Teemu Pukki at that stage, you go, right, like I've probably got maybe, especially with the dynamism he plays with, a few good years left in my legs. I maybe want a different challenge. I maybe want European football. I maybe want it, like that's why I mentioned it as a cycle, because I think as a cycle, I can see this coming to an end. And I think when it came in, it was obviously it was a pretty, maybe not innovative, but it was a bold maneuver from the club to basically give the keys to this guy and say, look, you can run our football club. And obviously there's been somewhat of a succession plan put in place with Neil Adams being the assistant sporting director now. Now, I don't know Neil personally. You probably do, I would imagine. And I know he's a favourite with people as much for what he did with the youth team, his commentary, all of that sort of stuff. Neil Adams is very well thought of in Norfolk, and I was going to say these parts. I'm not in these parts, but these metaphorical parts. He's very well thought of. Do I think he's got the chops to be a sporting director? Prove me wrong, Neil, but no. Unless this shadowing has been a very, very intensive period of education where he's soaking loads up. I would rather have seen Kieran Scott, for example, be the person that had been shadowing Stuart Webber, because that's someone who comes from a recruitment background. Neil Adams doesn't come from a recruitment background. I mean, he's done just about every job at the football club. Granted, sporting director's probably the next natural step in many ways. But I don't think... I would rather have seen someone be kind of anointed who came from that type of background, if you see what I mean. And I think that's my grave concern, because, I mean, again, coming back to this point of the cycle, if at the end of that cycle, the natural thing to happen is that Stuart Webber then goes, right, somebody else's turn, I need a new challenge. I think for his own personal stock as well, I think if Norwich City go down this time, there's loads of mitigating circumstances you can claim. Obviously, COVID, the way that that's affected the game, I think the increase in disparity between the Championship and the Premier League has gone on leaps and bounds. Like, even if you take it from when his Huddersfield team went up, he left, and they actually stayed up for a season. That wouldn't happen now. A squad of that quality wouldn't stand a cat's chance in hell of staying in the Premier League now, because the difference is just so extreme. So I think there's loads that Stuart Webber can claim, and I think he'll still be maybe not quite Champions League level thought of as Henry Winter once sort of dubbed him, but he's going to get a job at a really high level of football club and a much bigger club than Norwich City after this. I don't think that's in any doubt. But I think to safeguard that from his personal perspective, and we've got to remember that as much as people at football clubs care about how the club's doing and all of that, these are personal individuals who have their own ambitions, who are going to be thinking, right, how can I make sure that my next challenge is one that I want and enjoy? And I think from that perspective, I mean, Stuart Webber, I don't think we're going to see Stuart Webber at Norwich City for a great deal longer. If he doesn't leave at the end of this season, I think it'll be during the middle of next season. That's just, I don't know when to corroborate that. That's just my natural kind of instinct on the issue. And I think at that point, I begin to ask, right, okay, all of the nuts and bolts in terms of our boxes have been ticked in terms of what a succession plan might look like. But what is it going to look like? If we do stay in the Premier League, essentially you would assume it's going to be Neil Adams that will take the reins, someone who's never really, correct me if I'm wrong here, Michael, never really been a recruitment guy. I know he's done the loan manager thing, but that's not bringing players in. That's making sure that their development continues when they go out, which granted is a vital part of the role as well. But and obviously the interrelationship you have with other clubs is an important facet of that, and I'm sure Neil Adams is quite well connected in that regard. But surely we need someone that's got the recruitment chops for it. And I mentioned in that NCFC social the other day the amount of people we've lost. We've lost Kieran Scott, Chris Jones, who are both vital cogs in that recruitment that saw us like fly out the Championship, having spent basically no money at all, and assembled a superb squad that played great football. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the future of the football club in terms of what it's going to look like. And actually, regardless of whether we stay up or go down, because even if we do stay up, Stuart Webber's going to probably be looking at it and going, right, okay, so I've kept you up. That was always my intention. How much further can I take it with no money? Look at Newcastle, the way that they're spending just to get out of the bottom three, right? I mean, and then Burnley for another example of how you hit a plateau for so long, and then that just becomes unsustainable, and then you fall out of the league again, and then that cycle starts again. And that comes back to the endemic problems with English football. Hi to everyone that's saying hello in the comments, by the way. Hi, Radio Floyd. Hi, everyone else. You're very welcome for the stream, Caligari. Hi, sorry, I'm turning this into a monologue, mate. I'm concerned. I've brought up a few things there. Pick out what you want and run with the ball.
Yeah, well, I think I think any Norwich fan would be remiss to think that there's any situation where Norwich get up to the Premier League and then become established and never go down again. And I mean, Newcastle spending a lot of money to get out of the bottom three is kind of just a freak situation where a really big club has been bought by a Middle East state, and they are now going to be one of the richest clubs in world football. So, Watford didn't spend a shed load of money, and neither did Burnley. In fact, they made a net profit. Mm-hmm. So I think there needs to be a self-awareness from anyone who supports Norwich City of what the club is and where it is. And maybe some people don't like that self-awareness, and they want Norwich to just spend a bit more money. It's hard on the first season going up because there is obviously this idea that Norwich have to protect themselves from getting relegated, which I think means they don't spend as much as some supporters would like them to do or feel that they could do. But they will always, tie up the accounts and make sure there's a point as to why they have done that. And that's kind of their decisions. And they have to just make sure they're taking the supporters on board when they make them. I think I completely agree with you in terms of whether Norwich stay up or go down. The recruitment will be fascinating because it's going to be very different recruitment. I think if Stuart Webbers still at the club, then you've at least got someone heading it up who does know recruitment, and the team underneath him and the agents' conversations and things, it's all kind of similar to what he's had to do before, and he'll be the one ultimately making the decisions. And just like really the summer window, the majority of that responsibility is going to come down to him. I don't know what Stuart Webbers' future looks like. When he spoke about it at the AGM, he made the point that his new contract was going to allow him to sit down every year and be able to work out if, in 12 months' time, that was going to be it. So if he got to this summer and said that was it, that would not really factor in with how he said he was managing it. So I don't expect him to leave this summer. I think it'd probably be more tempting for him to leave if Norwich stayed up, because it is kind of like job done, away you go. But, it's also very difficult to get Norwich back up again for a third time if you get relegated. So I'm just envisaging Stuart Webber staying, and ultimately he'll only know in his head what he's planning to do or where his ambitions lie. I've always felt this niggle that of whether his ambitions really do lie with football and and making everything about football, or whether it's elsewhere and away from the game, or I don't know. I
think life does factor into it. I think him going abroad, obviously the COVID situation may have changed things, but my understanding was that definitely at one point in time the next move for Stuart Webber would have been abroad, which is good news for Norwich City from the perspective that we don't really want somebody else domestically poaching him necessarily, although it's probably going to be a team operating at a higher level than we are. My concern is I don't want Norwich City, who I think have now established a sporting model which works, right? I don't want it then to become and made. It's been a very international feel to it. It's been a very modern, progressive type of approach, which flies in the face of all the sleepy old Norfolk and doddery old Delia and all of this sort of nonsense rhetoric you get from the outside. But my concern is if Stuart Webber goes and he's no longer spearheading and driving that, because he's been the man at the forefront. He has been the man, right? Neil Adams comes in. Neil Adams has got such a history with the football club that it becomes more than just about what he is as the sporting director. He's almost accountable for the time that he was in charge of the club as manager. For, like, do you see what I mean? For his playing time with the club, it becomes a bit more than that. And I think my concern is that if you've got an insider, if you like, taking over, and an insider that's got so much history with the club in other ways, I think that in some ways almost kind of blurs the clarity of what the model actually is. And I think, if you do that moving forward, that seems dangerous to me.
What's interesting, I mean, when Neil first got the assistant sporting director job, I think everyone was like, and me included, all right, so that's the succession plan sorted, and there you go. Neil's a great guy. I've dealt with him a lot. I've got so much time for him as a person. I think he's great. I have noted, but when he got that job, I think people did kind of come back and say, no, don't assume that this is him just taking over from me when I leave, or taking over from Stuart Webber when he leaves. And actually, it's been interesting that quite a few Premier League clubs have brought in assistant sporting directors recently, just to sort of to carry that load, and not all of them with that succession plan in mind. So obviously Brighton are losing Dan Ashworth, which is really interesting. And that also makes me think, in terms of recruiting a sporting director, it's such a specialized position that has to have such a close relationship with the owners but also the head coach. And there's a lot that has to mesh to have the right sporting director. That, there's a few roles that have come up, and, no one's really pursued Stuart strongly that we know of to get him. Everton have been in that position. Newcastle, obviously Brighton now as well. So
he did have an offer from Germany at one point that he rebuffed.
Indeed, and that sort of opens up the question as to whether he would want to go abroad and where his ambitions lie. And again, we're talking on someone's behalf, and we don't know the answer, and only he'll know really what he's thinking. So, I wouldn't necessarily assume that Norwich wouldn't bring in someone externally should they need someone.
No, that's an interesting point. I've maybe been a bit myopic in my thinking then, just that assistant sporting director means Neil Adams will move up. Perhaps he's just the bridge between one sort of hierarchy head figure and another. Because the idea of Neil Adams remaining assistant sporting director and then another external figure with experience in the role and experience in recruitment coming in, I would be a lot more comfortable with that. Personally, I think that would be a better way to go. Ollie Starling's come up with a good question, which is relevant to the discussion, and says, would Zoe move with Webber as his wife? Yes, is the answer to that question. But that also brings up the subject of what Zoe brings to the executive team and her own experience. That's going to be a tough thing for Norwich City to replace. And as good as the internal appointments have been, and obviously we've built up a really good scouting data analysis team, all of that kind of stuff at Colney, I think that having so many internal appointments, and obviously it's good to have internal promotion, almost that ability of having other voices in the room is lost because you have climbed up the pyramid rather than coming in at a level where you feel that you can challenge maybe. And I think that's something that's maybe been lost from Norwich City with all of the people that have left that I mentioned, and members of the executive committee as well, like Ben Kensel and the like, have all kind of moved on. So it's almost like you maybe need a few more voices just to challenge and just to offer a bit more of that kind of thing. I think that's going to be the case when someone new comes in, but currently as well.
Yeah, I think they have lost a lot of people and a lot of bigger voices, and it does interest me how things look like if they don't, because they want to develop people. I think they look to promote people from within and then give them responsibility and see if they can develop. And I think they like that holistic idea of developing talent inside the football club in numerous different roles, not just in terms of on the football pitch, in terms of players,
of course,
but you have to sort of see how that works and if that then bears fruit. So,
But I think with any business, Michael, it's a combination of internal and external appointments, isn't it? It's great to have that internal thing of, we grow our own people and they can rise up and assume that responsibility. It's great to have good academy players, right? In terms of the on the field thing. If your team's lacking goals, you buy a goal scorer. Well, if you've got the money, you buy a goal scorer from elsewhere, you bring them in, and that external sort of person coming in can add something new, add new perspective, add new this and that. And it's the same in the staff roles at the club. It's the same in the world of business. I think you need to have that balance right. And I think Norwich City have maybe gone too far down the route of growing internally, just from my own point of view.
Yeah, well, it's hard because we don't know every appointment that's being made. And, just from the finance
we know the major ones, though. And I mean, for example, in the executive team, there wasn't a replacement. There wasn't a replacement for Ben Kensel's role. That struck me as a very interesting decision that wasn't really talked about much at the time.
I think that became a quite difficult role to bring in, though, didn't it? I mean, who is going to come in as a chief operating officer in a 3-person exec committee where you're also working with a husband and wife? I mean, it's it was all right, it becoming organic from where Norwich were and them evolving into that, but to actually appoint someone into that framework, I think is very difficult. So,
agreed.
I think in that term, it's a bit trickier. But the proof in the pudding is how the club's going to be managed. I suppose I don't feel I don't feel necessarily. Maybe it's a bit reactionary, but it's up to them to prove that they are making the right decisions and that the club is better off for it, rather than me sitting here telling them that they need to run it differently. So, but we're kind of all conscious of what that looks like. And I think that's similar with recruitment. I mean, I worry about how that looks and the framework that they're trying to operate in now in terms of recruiting players. I worry how that's going to look in the summer. But if they produce 5 out of 8, signings that help them to the championship title again, then I would be talking rubbish. So you kind of have to let it play out to a degree, but know that the scrutiny will be on them to get it right, and that it was their decision to have that framework.
No, that's true. In terms of how the future looks, then we mentioned about whether it would be Neil Adams stepping up to the main role or an external appointment. I know that there's going to be absolutely no sort of not Jeremy gossip or
love Jeremy Goss. He's my favourite sort of goss.
He is. I think he's my favourite sort of goss as well. Definitely hot off. In terms of hot goss off the press, I prefer looking at Norwich City scoring goals against Bayern Munich than I do the BBC transfer rumours page, for example. But anyway,
the winning goal at Anfield in front of the Kop, which would be nice.
Kop that, troops. I think I've kind of lost the thread.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. I do this to you and your podcast all the time, so it must be great to get the chance to return fire.
Yeah.
I think. By the way, thanks for coming on. I feel that has to be said. Like it's good. It's good to get your perspective, man. And I think obviously we said about past we were going to wrap up, so I want to kind of wrap up the discussion just by looking at how much hinges on Premier League survival and relegation. How much do you think? Obviously, we know about the finances. We know about the carrot of the Premier League and the fact that a lot of players, if they go down again, will probably be like, right, we've had enough of this yo-yo and we want to move. Right? We know about all the kind of obvious elements of it. But what about the bigger stuff? What about the sporting model? The hierarchy of those in charge at the football club. How much do you think staying up or going down will factor in to the decisions that these people make in the summer? Do you think it will be part of it, or do you think it will be a primary constituent of it?
No, I think I do not see it as a summer of significant change, regardless whether Norwich go up or down. I might be proven completely wrong on that. I don't see it like that. I think the issue probably comes if Norwich can't get back up, or if it becomes an issue then and the club are heading out of parachute payments and then they're sort of in the championship properly, and then what happens? I think it becomes a bit trickier because, as they've kind of admitted themselves, one of the biggest drivers in these 4 years has been developing talent and selling them on for huge amounts of money, which is helped when you're in the Premier League because you can say this guy has played in the Premier League, he's worth this much. If you're not, and those talents aren't getting to do that, then you can't charge as much money. Ultimately, you're going to be limited to a ceiling that is probably capped by the best teams in the Championship, which you wouldn't be because you would be in mid-table. So, Norwich have been Norwich have worked hard and been in a situation where they've benefited from being in the Premier League in terms of their entire model. I worry what happens when that edge they've had from playing in the Premier League is lost, and that's why there will be pressure if they go down on those two or three seasons. I think if they stay up, I don't think much changes because the second season, the expectation probably goes up. The second season in the Premier League is going to be no easier. You're kind of hoping that players that have played this year will be better for it and better, accustomed to the Premier League and can continue the development that they clearly would have made to get to that point. And also some signings will improve the team. But I mean, Norwich won't be kicking off in that season, not having to fight for survival from the very first kickoff. That's just the way it is. So I think as a club that it's what happens sort of in the time if they go down after that prolonged period that things would potentially have significant consequences. But I guess I feel like maybe that's why it's all quite. It's weird. It's really weird. It feels like so much is geared towards staying up because that is what they have to achieve, because that's what so much has been built towards, including last relegation.
That's why I feel this discussion has to be had.
And you're right, and it is, and you can't really second guess decisions that get made when that happens. You know, people might go, "Oh, right, I'm off. Screw it, I'm done. That was perfect. I'm off." They might not. You know, so but I maybe fundamentally, it's just the fear of what might happen.
Oh, you're just
they just pop out.
Your connection just went there. Sorry. Yeah. Carry on.
Maybe fundamentally what the result is of staying up and go down sort of a year or two down the line, that's probably the bigger fear. But I don't know if anything intrinsically changes from what happens this year. It just maybe sets a course that you can kind of know where it's going to head, I suppose. I don't know if that's a real cop-out answer, but it's a weird situation.
It is, and it's kind of fluid, and I can actually see us revisiting this at the end of the season. Actually, we'll do a State of the Canary Nation part 2, because Canary Nation seems to have become part of it, has pervaded the space, and I'm quite happy to. I mean, I'm Americanized and everything. I'm wearing a Dallas Cowboys t-shirt, and
I think I've got 7-Up on my t-shirt. That's American.
Is it? That's great. I'll tell you what, 7-Up and Dallas Cowboys, give us money.
That's due. It's due.
Well, give it to me and I'll share some with Michael. I'll buy him a cup of tea. Right, excellent stuff. I think we'll kind of leave that there, mate. In fact, one last one. Dean Smith. Do you think he's bought in for the long term, regardless of whether there is change above him? Because I think he is.
Yeah, good question that. And I've been asked it quite a lot.
Does that not make it not a good question because it's unoriginal?
No, I don't think so, because it's on people's lips. It's a good question because people are asking it. Not many people can answer it, I guess. Maybe then, so no pressure here.
That's just because you're the oracle, mate. That's
definitely not that. So I break it down into 3 bits, probably in my head, which is that, I mean, it will have been attractive to Norwich to recruit Dean Smith because he knows the Championship and he's had success there. So that's, you know, they will want Dean Smith next year. The Norwich job in the Championship is a really good job to have, I think, as a head coach. That's a really tempting job. Comes with a lot of expectation now because expected to get promoted basically, and at the first time of asking,
and winning the title probably,
and winning the title if you can, and maybe beat 97 points this time. So you're getting a lot of expectation with that job, but it's a plum one to have. So Norwich would see Dean Smith as having the abilities to get them back up, definitely, having known the squad and known what the club is about.
Yeah, I would think so.
I think Dean Smith came into the job saying himself he doesn't like not working. So the idea that he would walk away from Norwich without somewhere to go to not work seems stupid, if I'm honest. It makes no sense. The issue you might have is if someone comes in and offers him a job that's better and has more prospects, then maybe he has a question to discuss in his head, but that's such a hypothetical situation that
I don't see that happening until he gets Norwich back up or keeps them up.
So there's that. So yeah, I think that's it really. I see him as a real part of, and actually probably a really astute piece of recruitment, that it is Dean Smith in charge, because if there were changes above him, you'd feel that Dean Smith has the quality,
keep the ship on
the
course.
Leadership.
Yeah.
He may even know someone who could come in and would be a really good sporting director. So you just don't know.
It's all about the contacts, bro, in that game and in ours. I think that's a good point, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward. But in Dean Smith, we do have someone in charge of the team, and the only thing actually, I thought Daniel Farke was sacked far too late. The only thing that kind of indicates that is I'm not sure you would get as good an appointment as Dean Smith had he not been bulleted by Villa, which happened 6 days before it. So on that basis, it kind of counterbalances itself. Tell you what, you get time for a couple of quick fan questions?
Go for it.
Right, first one, Finn Stevens. Do you think, and this is kind of departing from the generalities of the discussion we've had, do you think Brentford could realistically be dragged into the relegation strap strap. I can't
Definitely.
speak today. The relegation strap. Are they going to be strapped in?
They're going to be strapped in and hoiked back.
Yeah, he says, I genuinely feel that's our only real chance of it, of getting out of it now that Newcastle have seemingly spent their way out of trouble. So yeah, can Brentford get dragged in?
Yeah, Finn's hit across the main point, which is that they have to be. I think what's becoming clear to me, I've sort of felt Norwich really need to target Brentford, and I've felt that probably since the turn of the year. But now I'm conscious that I'm feeling that because there is no other option. Norwich are 6 points behind them. They've got to play them at Carrow Road, so they have to beat them at Carrow Road, as far as I'm concerned. Because they need that as a victory, and they, in terms of the tally of victories, they're going to need to get to stay up, but also they need to beat Brentford to bring them within 3 points theoretically. And yeah, if we were, as we were saying on the space the other day, if we were to list 3 teams that Norwich can finish above who they are better than, I think Brentford are that. But a lot's going to depend on what Christian Eriksen is on. We all hope he's back and can play football because he's a brilliant player. He obviously went through a horrendous summer. We all know that. But it's a risk of a signing, and it's the only one they made. And teams do get figured out second time around. So they're on a wretched run, and I don't know if they look like getting out of it particularly, but Norwich will have to beat them. So yeah, for me, they're crucial to it now. Because yeah, Newcastle will get out of it as far as I'm concerned.
Just on them being on a wretched run, I think that's and being figured out second time around. Sorry, I think that's one of the advantages Norwich City have got. We are surprising teams again because we have that new manager thing. There's not going to be many teams, like Southampton's the only one I can think of, that Dean Smith is going to face twice. I mean, you probably
Wolves will be up to 3 times by the time we get to the end of the season.
I know, that's a good point.
But I think that's probably it.
Yeah. So I mean, that's obviously a positive. Ollie Starling asked the Manchester United of a recall option in Williams. We know that it's the end of the transfer window, so that's not going to happen. But it does touch on something which emerged. I think it was yesterday. Ralph Rangnick has obviously been massively impressed with what he's seen at Brandon Williams, demanding that he goes back to Manchester United. So I'm going to slightly editorialise on Ollie's question just by asking, do you think that's another check in the box of Norwich are a good club? Because obviously with the Billy Gilmour situation, it's kind of looking at the other way. Do you think it's a good sort of indication of Norwich, good club to send a young loan player to? And I think we've had more hits than misses, especially for the likes of Skip and stuff.
If people think Norwich are not a good club to send a loan player to, then they need to give their head a wobble. I mean, that's just part of the whole circus around Billy Gilmour. If loads of people have now decided Norwich are a rubbish place to send loan players to, there's just
social media can be misguiding. I think those in charge of football clubs will look at the greater body of evidence.
100%. And Brandon's doing very well. I have to say,
amazingly,
and it will be interesting what his summer and next season looks like. So yeah, but yeah.
Who's your player of the year as it stands right now?
Oh wow, that's a big question that probably needs some thought.
You've got to be quick because you've got.
It's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult because everyone's sort of being good in patches, really. So you need someone who's done it consistently, and I don't know. I don't even know who I'd say who's done it consistently.
I think if you're going in consistency, you're probably had a couple of bad games, but you're probably looking at Grant Hanley. But I'm giving it to Brandon Williams for the way that he's. I mean, I was going to give it to Matthias Norman, but it's been too big a gap. Unless he's a great end to the season now, like I think it's just been too long out with injury, which is unfortunate for him. And I think he was the colossus in a failing Farke team. But I think Brandon Williams, for the fact that I think his attitude seems to have pervaded the rest of the squad, that's the way that I'm leaning. Just before we finish up, Troops, if you've got any suggestions, fire them in the chat very quickly, and I'll mention them before the end. But what about you, Michael? You got a conclusion on that?
Yeah, Brandon is probably a good shout. I mean, and again, likewise, Max has been coming in for a bit of stick. He's made a few mistakes, but he's still, in my mind, really as consistent as anyone. So, and he has played almost the entire season. So, it's a bit tricky giving it to a lone player, I think, as player of the season. But I don't know, maybe that's just me.
Modern football, mate, isn't it? It's a Man United player.
And again, Norwich have basically been reliant on Timu Puki's goals. So, and he never gets a mention, does he? What I would say is it's up for grabs. I think we've got what, 15, 16 games or whatever. It's definitely up for grabs if someone can do something over those 16 games.
I would say so. I'm looking at you, Matthias Norman. I'm looking at you, Adam Ida. Because I think if Ida can go in a wee scoring run, Milot as well seems to be playing himself. There was that one run where he carried the ball at such pace, with pace and grace. One of the best runs I've seen from a Norwich City player in a good few years now. Anyway, that wraps us up, Michael. Is there anything that you want to tell people? I mean, people know who you are. It feels almost pointless asking you this question. But where can people find you, Michael?
I think I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm on TikTok and YouTube. So,
you do TikTok? How do you do that? Because I am 30 odd, right? And turned 33 at the weekend, right? And I'm just honestly,
the weekend just gone.
Aye.
Happy birthday! I didn't know that.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Happy birthday, Stu.
Do you know what, though? I felt so... Cheers, mate. I've got nothing to cheers with. I've got an empty cup. There we go. I'll simulate.
Good job.
Lovely. Refreshing. I think I felt really old because see that moment when my mum brought through the cake, right? And she didn't put 33 candles on it because that would just have been ridiculous, right? So she'd won with a 3 and a 3, and I thought, it felt old in that moment. Know what I mean? So
you're talking to a 40-year-old, so you know.
But you look better. You look better for it. You've done easier paper run. But you're a 40-year-old that does TikTok. Just quickly,
really sad.
Quickly sum up for me why and how and what's the point of TikTok?
Oh, I can't answer any of those questions, but I do a reel on Instagram and then I can copy that video and put it on TikTok. So that's why I do it.
Oh, so it's just multitasking.
Yeah. Right. No, in all honesty, TikTok is a hell of a lot of effort and you have to have a really creative mind. I can't bother to do all that stuff. So I just do something and put it on there. And
like me, a guy that just talks, right? See this idea of miming. Ugh. Right, so that was nearly a swear. That was nearly an unbleeped swear. How did you enjoy your editing of the last On the Ball podcast? By the way, that must have been fun.
Yeah, I had to cut out half of it.
Yep, exactly. Fun. So people can find you across the socials, right, mate?
Yeah, to put my name in them, and I'll probably come up with a tick.
People know that. In terms of me, you can find me down there. If you have enjoyed this, please do share it, by the way, because I want people to start listening again, because I've not cracked out a podcast in about a month at least. So yes, please do start listening. Please appreciate that because I've got a very, very demanding new job. That's why I've not been doing Hodge On Nodge, but I still love it. I still love Norwich City, and I still love all of you. So thank you very much, Michael.
Love you, Stu.
Love you, my man. Thank you very much to all of our loyal watchers and listeners. As I say, please do share, subscribe, tell your friends. On the Ball City.